Trustees adopted a list of recommendations from its Somali Students Task Force, but some of the parents say that the extra support it provides is a form of segregation.
This Somali Student Task Force was formed in an effort by the board to help struggling students succeed in school. But many Somali parents say the extra support being promised is a form of segregation. Ahmed Hussen is a Toronto lawyer. He's also president of the Canadian Somali Congress. He has been working with those parents, and he is on the line now to explain their objections. Good morning.
Good morning, Helen.
From the outside, Ahmed, this would appear to be something that the board has taken on to support the Somali Canadian community. Why are some parents so strongly opposed to the accepting of this report?
Because it's a top-down process. There was never adequate community consultation by TDSB. Therefore, whatever TDSB's task force comes up with is considered illegitimate in the eyes of the Canadian Somali parents.
Can I just ask what kind of consultation there was? I mean, you say it was inadequate. Was there none, or were there some participants?
There were two meetings. One was outside the community, where most of the community lives, and one was inside the community, but there was no adequate notification. So a lot of these parents couldn't even attend. At the end of the day, Toronto District School Board, the recent weekend study that came out showed that TDSB schools are the worst performing in the whole of GTA. TDSB has dramatically failed our students in the last number of years. So the failure is on their feet. They can't then turn around and say, we have all the answers and we wouldn't bother consulting you. We'll move ahead with recommendations and expect us to just go along with that. That's just not acceptable in this day and age.
How has the board failed your students?
Well, the proof is there to see. The dropout rate is high. There's a lack of resources in a lot of the schools in Etobicoke North, which is where most of my community lives. But the issue here is, it starts from the symbolic to the substantive. The symbolic being the name. The name Somali Task Force is not something that we look kindly on. It should be called the Task Force for Canadian students who are struggling in school or something to that effect. Calling kids who are born in Humber Hospital Somalis is stigmatizing. The schools are supposed to be the first stop in integration, not the first stop in marginalization. TDSB has not really taken the process of community consultation seriously. They have not engaged this community. They have had a top-down approach. We've told them to stop doing that and to come back to the community, but it's like addressing a runaway train. They're proceeding full steam ahead, and they don't care what we have to say about this.
Yeah, can we go through some of the recommendations that you find the worst, the most offensive?
Yes. For example, there's a proposal to create a so-called Somali month. We're part of the black community, and we're happy to be that. What's the point of having a Somali month? The second one is to create a so-called Somali Heritage Center. It's up to the Canadian Somali community to create a Somali Heritage Center. It's not up to the TDSB to create heritage centers for various communities. TDSB's job is to teach English and math, and they're not doing that properly. So they should stick to their core responsibility instead of going around and saying that we will create a parenting center or a Somali Heritage Center. That's just, it's like diverting away from the real issue. And it's indicative of the fact that they haven't really had real community consultation, because those things would have been nipped in the bud if they had brought those proposals initially to the community.
Yeah, our CBC News report says the decision to strike the task force was in response to these dropout rates as high as 25%. Also, problems with truancy among kids who are of Somali descent. I mean,
okay.
What do you make of that? Do those numbers? I mean, you said there is a dropout problem. Is there an attendance problem, and how does the board address that? Do parents not need to take some role in that?
Sure, parents have a responsibility to play in this. Coming back to the dropout rate, the source data that's used by TDSB to reach these conclusions are suspect, because they interviewed about 100 students from our community, and that's the basis of their whole TDSB-wide data. But going back to the point about some of the recommendations, you can't reach recommendations for a community without engaging them. It's very basic, and without that, those recommendations are not legitimate in the eyes of the community. So how will you go around implementing them?
We saw those parents last night that did show up at the board meeting. They looked very angry. They wanted to at least have the chance to have the issue publicly debated. How representative is that group of people within the community and their attitudes towards this whole thing?
I mean, we've had talk shows in the community and across other radio stations in the city. 9 out of 10 callers from our community oppose the task force. I'll tell you how confused we are about the TDSB. A number of years ago, the community, the same parents went to Kipling High School, which a lot of our children go to, and they suggested creating a special scholarship to encourage kids from our community. And TDSB shot that down because they said that TDSB policy is to have if we're going to set up a scholarship, it would be open to all students. We can't segregate, right? Mm-hmm. Now, the same TDSB is telling us in their recommendations on the Somali Task Force that they'll create a special scholarship for our kids. Now, how does that make sense? Isn't that discriminatory against other children?
So if this is discriminatory, where does this issue go from here? What are you going to do next?
Well, if TDSB will not engage us, we will go above their heads to the Ministry of Education, and we'll keep going. TDSB and these parents are equal in the eyes of the law. An entity like TDSB that has dramatically failed our children cannot force these recommendations down these parents' throats.
And if parents were involved in a process that that led to recommendations that affected specifically this community, would that be all right, or you just don't want anything that isolates one community?
That would be okay, but the first thing we would do is we would change the name to say Canadian Somali students. Secondly, the recommendations would really reflect the true needs of the community and not some heritage centers and Somali months and so on. That's a joke, and we shouldn't have that in 2014.
Thank you for taking time to speak with us today.
You're welcome, Helen.
Okay.
Thank you.